Banging out another video today before I go to sleep. Getting this one done, so I won't see your replies from the one I posted that I recorded earlier today before I get a chance to record on the weekend. Assuming I get a chance, which is why I'm recording this now. Yes, Kaiba, I know. Last one, then I turn out the lights, I promise. At least then it'll cool down a little bit in the bedroom. And what are we doing for this one, ladies and gentlemen? Why, of course, I'm here to do Super Deck Sunday, Sunday, Sunday. I made you guys a promise. You guys have been clamoring for it in the comments. Well, Snoop has been clamoring for it in the comments, and I think it's only fair to give him a chance to see what he's been waiting for. This is my 5-color dinosaur deck. Sorry, not dragons. Talked about dragons last week. This week we're doing dinosaurs, and then we're moving on from 5-color decks for a little while, because I'm honestly just overwhelmed with the amount I've built. I need to build something just kind of simple and easy for a couple times. So I'm thinking I'm going to do mono white next. And I haven't decided what the second one I want to build yet is next. But I'm giving it some thought. In the meantime, though, that's not what we're here for. I will crack this baby open. I will set up the cards accordingly for the non-spoiler format of us revealing them. For once in a change, we're going to do this a little differently, though. Normally I go lands, and then I work my way across, and I usually try to do, like, the commander last, or at the very least I do like the creature pile last. And while we are going to do the creature pile last, that is going to remain the same. Actually, no, the creature pile is going to be second last. I actually have something else I want to do. This one we're going to jump around a bunch. Creatures there, we'll put that there, we'll put these two down here. Hopefully that's all in the video. Nice, yes. So, getting it out of the way. This is the first deck that I ever built where the commander is completely... I'm not going to say completely irrelevant, but it's definitely not the point of the deck. The commander is just kind of there to fulfill the color requirements, essentially. And that commander happens to be Jensen, Carthalion, Druid Exile. Bring him in close for you guys so you can see him. When I got the first copy of the Jensen Carthalion deck that I opened back a year and a half ago, I immediately snagged this guy for my dinosaur deck because of two reasons. One, there's a decent number of multicolor permanents, not enough to trigger his second ability really very often, but his first ability, I can scry a bunch of times with this, and that's pretty good. The other thing is, if I get really, really mana screwed somehow, some way, at the very least, I can pay 5 into him, tap him, and get Wooburg to hopefully play a spell or two each turn. So in a crisis, that's good. The other thing that's nice about him is he's an insanely low cost at only 2 mana. So replaying him a few times is not an issue, especially if somebody decides I need to sacrifice stuff. Jensen is usually the first guy that goes, to be perfectly honest. With that said, I'm just going to show you a few tokens. I got some eggs, I got some dinosaurs. Pretty good standard stuff. I like that one. The 3-1 actually is probably one of my favorites. But, yeah. So next we're going to go into the instants and sorceries, actually, which there is 1 instant and 6 sorceries, so not a lot. Growth Spiral is the only instant in this deck. This deck has no counter spells. It was not built with that in mind when I originally built it. And I've never actually decided to want to upgrade it to have a bunch of that crap. For all the high-powered dinosaurs and stuff that are in this deck, it really was never meant to be played more than like a bracket 2 or bracket 3. I don't think there's any game changers as far as I know. I haven't looked at it in terms of the new game changers list, so there might be something that's been added, but as far as I know, I don't have any game changers in this deck, technically. Lavalanche is the only X spell that I'm running in this deck. Occasionally, it's actually really funny to slam a player with this, just to try and win the game. Cultivate to help me get some lands out. Triumphant Chomp, just because, you know, we're playing with dinosaurs, so why not? Defossilize just felt very on theme. So of all the Return from the Graveyard cards, this one just was clearly the right one for this deck. I put a Kodama's Reach in here, and to finish it off, I have a Savage Stomp, again, more so than anything else because it's connected with the dragon, or not dragons, damn it, with dinosaurs. I'm going to do that a bunch of times in this video. I challenge anybody who actually is of legal drinking age to take a shot every time I mess that up. That would be really funny. Except I don't want any of you guys to get actually sick, so please don't do that. Alright, next we're going to do these two down here. I have one Planeswalker and one Battle in this deck. This is one of the only decks, actually currently it might be the only deck that I'm running a Battle in. I have like 3 battles, and the other 2 I'm not super fond of. The only deck that might have a Battle in it I'm not sure of is one of the Precons that I own that I haven't changed. Might have a Battle, but otherwise, this is the only deck that I own that has one. So let's do these two first. We'll do Huadli Dinosaur Knight. Just the classic standard Planeswalker to have in a dinosaur deck. You get to put +1/+1 counters on dinosaurs. Dinosaurs deal damage equal to their power to creatures you don't control. Dinosaurs get +4/+4 until end of turn. All that good stuff. The battle is the more interesting one. The battle, of course, being an amazing little one called Invasion of Ikoria. I love this battle. First off, when it enters the battlefield, I get to choose how much mana I'm going to pay, and based on the amount of mana, I'm going to get a really cool dinosaur. And yes, a lot of the ones you're thinking of are in this deck. But the one that you're thinking of most should be in this deck is definitely actually not in this deck, which is kind of funny. That Precon I never managed to get my hands on, and now it's honestly too expensive for me to want to buy it. And the single never came up available anywhere that I wanted to get it when I was building the deck, and at this point I just don't see the need to add it. So, what is it called? The Velociraptor Commander is the one dinosaur that is not in this deck. Of course, if we succeed in getting the battle out, we get a really cool dinosaur. Reach, non-human creatures I control can assign their combat damage as though it weren't blocked. So basically, all my dinosaurs go on a savage stomping spree, which is pretty nice. So there is that card. Alright, next let's do the enchantments. Enchantments? Nope, that's artifacts. Enchantments. So we have a Spelunking. That's in here for a very specific reason, and no, I do not have very many caves, so I'm not gaining the life. It is because of that bottom little line of text there is very, very valuable in this deck. I could have put in a couple other ways to keep things from tapping, but I honestly did not with this deck. I'm not 100% sure why, I just didn't bother. I focused mainly on making sure I had enough lands and making sure that I had plenty of stuff that helped me achieve what I needed to in terms of getting the mana I need to play what I want to. So, we got the Spelunking, we got the Fertile Ground for doing just that sort of thing that I was just mentioning. I get to add 1 mana of any color when the land is tapped, in addition to whatever that land already produced, which is pretty solid. Descendant's Path. At the beginning of my upkeep, I reveal the top card. If it's a creature that shares a creature type with a creature I control, I can cast that card without paying its mana cost. Basically, just a great way to get dinosaurs out for cheap. It actually, to be perfectly honest, messes me up more than it helps me a lot of times, because there are times where I get something really cool off the top that isn't a dinosaur, and I end up losing that. But otherwise, it has been a pretty good card. Maelstrom Nexus is in here for the same reason. The goal is to just try and get the dinosaurs to come off the top of the deck as much as possible. Again, I know I should be running the one commander dinosaur in this deck, and I'm not, and you guys could rip me apart in the comments if you want, but I have lots of other ways of getting stuff out, so I'm pretty happy with this. Poetic Ingenuity is an amazing card from Caverns of Ixalan. I can't believe they actually printed this. I basically get to make that many treasure tokens based on how many dinosaurs attack. I'm going to be attacking a lot with dinosaurs, so that's not an issue. Which just gives me extra mana to produce. I need to put a treasure token into this pile of tokens. Just realized that. Something I have to add at some point. Anyways, the other thing I really like is whenever you cast an artifact spell, you get to create a 3/1 dinosaur. I don't have a lot of artifacts, but the few that I do, if I can get a couple of dinosaurs out of it, I'm pretty happy. Welcome to is a fun little enchantment. For each opponent, I get to choose a non-creature artifact, and it becomes a 0/4 wall. And at the end of this enchantment, all the walls get destroyed. So that's always fun. But in the middle, I get to create a 3/3 green dinosaur token with trample, which also gets haste until end of turn. But anyways, after all the walls get destroyed, even if they don't get destroyed, this gets exiled and returned as Jurassic Park, which is beautiful. The artwork is insanely awesome on this card. And it is by far one of the coolest lands in this deck. All my dinosaurs have escape, which is amazing. And in addition to that, this thing taps and gives me a forest mana for every dinosaur I control. So basically just, I think there's one that's like Gaia's Cradle or something like that that does it for all creatures. This is like a mini version of that, which is beautiful. And of course the famous quote from Jurassic Park, "Life finds a way." I love the artwork on this one. And whenever a non-token creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield, I get to populate. So there are going to be a bunch of dinosaur tokens. That is definitely a fact. But I'm going to keep this aside for now because this actually has a very specific combo, which goes along with some of the creatures over here. But we're going to get to creatures after we go through lands. Lands are very pretty in this deck. First, we took a bunch of the lands out of the original Painbow deck that I bought and put them directly into here. So we've got, I think, most of, if not all of the tri-tap lands that do not actually count as trinomes, unfortunately, but the ones that at least still tap for 3. 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think there's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes. I then have all the ones that are searchable, which is funny because I don't have anything that searches them really per se, except for 2 or 3 creatures that can do it. But otherwise, no searchers in this deck. Cinderglade enters tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. So do Sunken Hollow, Canopy Vista, Smoldering Marsh, Prairie Stream. All of those are in there essentially just because they filter for 2 mana, the same way these ones are in here because they filter for 3. The amount of times that you end up in a 5-color deck where you just can't tap for the right correct colors is insane, I find. So my goal was to try and solve that as much as humanly possible with a bunch of these lands, which is again why we had the Spelunking from over here in this deck to basically put all of these into play untapped. In addition to that, we have the Jurassic Park Command Tower, which is beautiful. We also have 2 of the Jurassic Park lands that flip. I like that. It's cute. The Velociraptor gets out at night. This side is beautiful. I will show you the other side, but forewarning, the other side is very graphic and kind of disturbs me a little bit, so I don't play the other side because it makes me sad. I don't like to see all the dinosaurs dead. I like to see people oohing and awing over the dinosaurs. And then I have just a set of the Jurassic Park basics from Caverns of Ixalan again. Just beautiful lands. They did a fantastic job with the art on these, to be perfectly honest. And then the piece de resistance at the end. Sorry, went a little fast with the planes there. The planes are probably the nicest ones, to be perfectly honest. And I would say the islands are actually the worst ones. Out of the 5, I would say the islands are the worst for sure. And I think definitely the plains are the nicest. But our piece de resistance, this land right here, is the one that you guys are going to all go ooh and ah over. It is my only copy of Cavern of Souls. Yes, that's right. I have the very beautiful Cavern of Souls. Not a hollow one, but still amazing. Add 1 mana, spend this to cast a creature spell of the chosen type. Obviously, that's going to be dinosaurs. And then my dinosaurs can't be countered. Just a fantastic include in this deck because getting that first dinosaur onto the battlefield to trigger the Cascade, for example, or to trigger the Populate ability, or etc., etc. Just all very valuable reasons to play that card. So that is why Cavern of Souls ended up being in this deck over all the other ones that I could have picked. And also it was one of the first 5 color decks I ever built. I've built 5 now? 5 or 6 so far, and I have at least 2 more that I'm planning to build off the top of my head. So I'm going to have a lot of 5 color decks, but I mean, it's not necessarily the end all be all. They're very challenging builds, first off, and second off, they're very challenging to play, I find sometimes. I'm going to actually save artifacts for last, for a very specific reason. And we're going to go to creatures next. And when we go to creatures, I'm going to do this in a very movie-esque kind of style. Because I would like to welcome you to my version of Jurassic Park. So first off, we have my version of Hammond. Yes, I am using Gandalf Westward Voyager as Hammond from Jurassic Park. I think it's perfect. First off, if they made a John Hammond card, I never got my hands on it, so unfortunately there are some Jurassic Park cards that I do own that I did not put in this deck because they just simply did not fit well. And there are other Jurassic Park cards that I don't own that I would love to get and put in this deck, but I just can't right now. John Hammond, if he exists, and I assume he does, would be one of those cards I would love to put in this deck, probably. But anyways, instead I have, whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, each opponent reveals the top card of their library. If any of those cards share a card type with that spell, I get to copy that spell. Essentially, I'm trying to copy my dinosaurs. A bunch of the legendary ones obviously won't do anything for me other than give me their ETBs in extra time if they have one. But otherwise, I could end up with like 3 or 4 super huge dinosaurs for the cost of 1, which is pretty solid. I figured if anybody is making dinosaurs, John Hammond, that's pretty close. I have a paleontologist because, of course, we need a paleontologist, and she's not going to be one of the ones that is like the main character. She's one of the ones that's digging in the cave at the beginning of the film. But she does an awesome job giving me mana of any color, and I can exile a card from my graveyard and then cast a dinosaur creature spell that I exiled it with this. But it enters with a finality counter, which is annoying. I do not have a way in this deck to flicker things to get rid of the finality counter, so unfortunately, when they come in with that, I am just sunk to lose them eventually. Um, One of my many humans that is visiting the park is Sirach Dragonclaw. Flash, he can't be countered, and all my creature spells can't be countered. Plus, he gives all my creatures trample, which I already have a bunch of dinosaurs that do trample, don't get me wrong, but giving trample across the board is just a nice thing, and this is one deck where I did not throw Garruk's Uprising in here, because he takes care of the issue. Paradise Druid, that would be my ally, for sure. She comes in, she has Hexproof as long as she's untapped, and whenever I tap her, I get to add 1 mana of any color. Like, that is clearly ally, for sure. That would be the guy who takes care of the raptors in the first film, I would say. We have our frog, of course, that gives us our extra DNA for our dinosaurs. We have Huatli, Poet of Unity. I'm going to say this is one of the kids. And, of course, fancy card. Beautiful hollow, and transforms into a beautiful enchantment. So this side, and she enters the battlefield, I get to search my library for a basic land, which is awesome. And then I can pay to exile her and bring her back as this. And then I get a 3/3 green dinosaur creature token. All my Roar of the Fifth People gains... Oh, all my creatures get to tap for either red, green, or white for a turn. Then I can search my library for a dinosaur, put it into my hand, and then all my dinosaurs gain double strike and trample until end of turn. So it's basically just a great way to close out the game if I can get to round 4 without it being eliminated from the board. If it does get eliminated from the board, I can bring it back with various ways, potentially, from my graveyard that we've seen already, defossilize, for example. But for the most part, it's kind of a one-shot deal, which, again, I do not run counter magic. That's kind of the whole point of this deck, is to just build fun dinosaurs and have fun with them. Either people will let me play my dinosaurs, or people won't let me play my dinosaurs. And if people don't let me play my dinosaurs, then I'm not going to probably have a good time, and I'm probably not going to win. But if I play my dinosaurs, I'm still going to probably lose, but at least I'll have more fun. Next, I want to show you a combo that I'm running in this deck, and that's actually a big reason why I'm running this, is we've got our Atla Nest Tender. This is, of course, I don't have the rich version, which is Ian Malcolm. I want to get an Ian Malcolm for this deck, but I can't afford that, so we're running this one. And Polani's Hatcher is insane. Basically, I can make the egg with this guy, and then I can hatch the egg with this guy on my combat step. And once I hatch the egg, I get a dinosaur. And assuming that dinosaur comes into play and it has power 4 or greater, I get to populate, which means chances are if I have an extra egg, I get to make a new egg. Or I might make another dinosaur, or whatever. So it's just a really cool, that's why I wanted to hang on to this one to show you, because I like the way these two play off each other, and every dinosaur that I bring in with the cascading or etc. just gives me more triggers off of the life we'll have. Find a way. Great stuff, great stuff. Next, we got just a few random 5-color cards from the original Painbow deck that I added in here. The Angel, mostly just because she has flying, and whenever she deals combat damage, I can cast a spell without paying its mana cost. I figured that's just an insane ability to have on stack with regards to dinosaurs. Dragons are essentially dinosaurs with wings. That was my argument for why I put this in there. And Chromanticore is an insane card to actually bestow onto a dinosaur. Giving any main, like, Atali, or giving, any big-ass dinosaur, Galta, etc. +4/+4, Vigilance, First Strike, Flying, Lifelink, and Trample is an insane insane prospect. So I just figured those 3 cards deserve to be in there. This one lets me draw cards too. And like I say, that one lets me cast. They all have flying, which means they all have evasion, which this deck does not have a ton of evasion, so it's good to have that. And also, those are some threats that will take away some heat from some of the dinosaurs I play, hopefully. Such as the Polani Nest Tender combo that I like to run. The other combo that I hope to take some heat off of is, of course, Owen Grady and Blue. Because how could you build a Jurassic Park deck and not include the Jurassic World hot stuff, hunka guy over here, and the Raptor that everybody loves to champion over here. And actually, to be honest, I was not going to originally include these until I read about their abilities. Their abilities are insane. Basically, this one, I tap him and I get to put a counter onto a dinosaur. And that counter can either be a menace, a trample, a reach, or a haste. So that dinosaur can attack right away, or I can use it to block flying, which again is an issue in this deck to a certain extent. Not as big an issue as it used to be, but to a certain extent. The menace, the trample, great stuff. And if you put those counters onto blue, then whenever you put a dinosaur into play, all the counters that are on blue get put also onto that other dinosaur. So if blue has menace, all my future dinosaurs. If blue has flying, reach, all my future dinosaurs have reach, etc., etc. Pretty solid combo. Again, something I try to avoid letting people target too much because I don't have lots of ways of recursion and other things in this deck. But that is the main goal, is to do as much stuff as we can to kind of take the heat off of some of the interesting combos we run. The final interesting combo we run is Marauding Raptor and Wrathful Raptors. This is just too good a combo not to include. Essentially, every time I play a dinosaur, this guy's going to ping it for 2, and whenever that dinosaur gets pinged for 2, it's going to get to deal that much damage to any target that isn't a dinosaur, which could essentially be any creature on somebody else's board, or I could just start pinging people in the face. Lava Lanch onto Wrathful Raptors is an insane way to close out the game, if need be. I have won games before because people have played things like chain destruction and stuff like that. I don't think it's called chain destruction. What is it called? Crap. You know what I'm talking about. Anyways, very tired. Sorry. Try to get through this and then get some sleep. Alright. Now we're going to take a tour through the park, see some of the species we have, the smaller species first, and then we'll work our way up to the bigger, more impressive creatures. So first off, I did mention that some of them have cycling. I'm going to just find the ones that do have cycling super quick and put them all together. I have 4 of them in this deck that cycle. The one that I did not include is the Black Stegosaurus, just because it honestly did not have a very good secondary ability. I like the fact that this one, although it does cost a lot, comes in with Ward 3 and is a 6/7. That's pretty beefy. Soaring Sandwing, I get a creature that flies, I get 3 life if it comes into play, or I can plain cycle it. This one gives me a 3/3, or I get to forest cycle it. And that one costs significantly less compared to... Actually, no, it costs the same way. Yeah, most of these I'm cycling for, to be honest. And this one, Trample, the Sacrifice of Land has sometimes come into play as an interesting ability to help me out in a pinch. But for the most part, these 4, like I say, we're just cycling these dinosaurs to get some of the nice dual lands onto the battlefield. Or into my hand, so that I can put them onto the battlefield. Next, we are running a Thrashing Brontodon. Just a great way to get rid of a pesky artifact or enchantment that somebody's played. Pugnacious Hammerskull. Chances are, if I'm attacking, I have another dinosaur. But it's a really strong dinosaur for 3, so that's the main reason it's in here. It's one of the few that could actually get replaced at some point. Armored King Collar is another one that is in here temporarily, essentially. Like there are dinosaurs that I could replace these ones with. I just haven't picked any up that I like in particular yet. This one, I can reveal a dinosaur. If I do, I get 3 life. Actually, you know what? There is a dinosaur I want to replace that one with. We're going to do this in the middle of the video. Because I remember seeing one the other day that I was really excited about, and I wanted to include it in a deck, and then I couldn't figure out what I wanted to replace it with, and so it never made the cut. But it is definitely better than that one. As much as I like Armored King Collar because it's got some cute artwork, it is not nearly as good as... Where are you, baby? Bear with me, folks. I will be with you in a minute. Irony of doing this while we are talking. Did I put it in here? I might have put it in here. Really? Didn't put it in there. Why do I make things so difficult on myself? I should have totally checked the deck before, one last time before I started this video, but I did not. This will be worth it when you see the dinosaur I want to put in. You'll understand why it's definitely going to be a better one than that choice. Pulled it the other day. It was actually temporarily in the deck, and then I took it out for another card that I put in because that one was a much better choice than it, not realizing that the Armored King Collar was in there and that it actually costs the same, I think, as the one I want to replace it with right now. I was like, why are you standing up, Daddy? Hopefully you guys can still hear me nattering. Otherwise, this video became very boring for you. I might have to cut a bunch of this out. Come on, dinosaur, where are you? I know you're in here somewhere. Where are you, dinosaur? Oh, hell. It's a really good one, too. Like I say, when you see it, you're going to understand why this is the better choice for sure for that deck. There it is. Alright. It costs 1 more. But this is definitely a much better choice than Armor King Collar. Sorry, Armor King Collar, you have been cut. You might give me 3 life, but this thing is just insane. So if it deals damage, it deals double damage. I'm almost done, Kaiba. Vernon's Son's Avatar, on the other hand, is a great card, because every dinosaur is going to give me life. Panda Altosaur is nice because it's one of the few that does have evasion, and I can also tap it to deal damage. So if I don't have to use it to block, and it survives, each turn at the end step of the person next to me, I can tap it and do 2 damage to everybody just to annoy him. Another great thing, just to, like, again, trying to give them targets to hit so they don't hit my combos or hit my closers. Trumpeting Carnosaur, Trample, lets me discover 5, which just lets me trigger some of the other stuff that I have, and I can discard it to deal 3 damage, but typically I don't do that part. Hulking Raptor is an insanely awesome dinosaur. First off, the Ward 2 is great, but the second thing is you get 2 green for it to being on the battlefield during your main phase 1, which is pretty awesome. Rampaging Ceratops can't be blocked except by 3 or more creatures. Fantastic fighting creature. I like to call this Super Menace. So often when I swing with this one, it's difficult for people to deal with. Golta Primal Hunger, because of course you're going to put in Golta Primal Hunger. And full art, beautiful. Izakith, firstborn of Gishath, sorry. Honestly, he's in here more so than anything else because the fact that it's just really good artwork. I do like the fact that when it comes into play, you can pay 2, and if you do, a dinosaur will deal power to another creature you control, to another target creature. So I mean, you could trigger that dinosaur combo that I showed you earlier on yourself, or you can pick your biggest dinosaur and just wipe out a problematic creature on somebody else's board pretty cheaply. Earthshaker Dreadmaw, basically just your classic, what was his name? The original Dreadmaw. Colossal Dreadmaw. It's basically like an upgraded version of Colossal Dreadmaw, which is awesome because when it enters the battlefield, you get to draw a bunch of cards based on how many dinosaurs you control, as long as this isn't the only one. Rampaging Brontodon, trample 7/7, but the biggest thing is whenever it attacks, it's getting +1/+1 until end of turn for each land you control. There are a lot of lands in this deck. I think the count is like 36. 37. So I mean, I'm not expecting to have all of those on the battlefield, but if I have even 10 of those on the battlefield, this thing becomes a serious problem. Scytheclaw Raptor is just a great way to prevent people from playing outside of their own turn, including myself. Again, I don't run a lot of counter magic, so this isn't going to affect me a whole bunch, but this is a great way to deal with that pesky blue player at the table. Because whenever they play a spell that's not on their turn, they're going to take 4 damage. This is one of my more expensive pieces in the deck, and we're getting into the more expensive pieces now. Velociraptor is Rampaging Ferocidon, essentially, but beautiful, beautiful Secret Lair artwork that I paid top dollar for. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, this thing's going to deal 1 damage to that creature's controller. So basically, there's going to be a whole bunch of life pinging going on. My hope is to have, Verdant Sun Avatar out at the same time that I play this, so that at least when my dinosaurs are coming into play, I'm only losing 1 life, essentially. But I'm gaining a whole bunch on the toughness, so I'm actually not losing anything. I'm still net positive, is the goal. But people who are playing a bunch of tokens and stuff, this is definitely going to be a problem for them. I happen to have a Zatalpa Primal Dawn from that beautiful Foundation starter kit that I got. I was looking for this dinosaur for a long time. The fact that this is a cheaper version doesn't bother me in the least. The fact that it has flying, double strike, vigilance, trample, and indestructible is what is insane and most valuable to me. And we're going to get to why in a few cards. So I'll just set that aside for a second. Gishath, of course, has to be in here because, I mean, we got the baby. We would have to have the real one. Vigilance, Trample, Haste. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player or reveal cards from the top, put any dinosaurs onto the battlefield. And essentially, when those enter battlefield, we've got all the triggers that go on, which is pretty solid. At least as far as I know, putting things onto the battlefield is still entering the battlefield. I could be wrong about that. If I am, oh well. Even still, classic dinosaur, it had to be included in this deck. Itali Primal Conqueror, because of course, why not? How could you not include that one? Again, just a classic staple for dinosaur decks. I love the fact that you can pay 9 and a Phyrexia green to transform it into a creature that essentially can win you the game with one strike. Because whenever it deals combat damage to a player, they get that many poison counters. So if you can pump the crap out of this thing, which believe me I can, you're going to do really well with it. And again, it's just another threat, trample, indestructible. So everybody has to try and get this thing off the board before you can transform it, essentially, is the goal. Which means it's just another target for them to hit. Very rich target environment in this deck. Again, we're just trying to keep them from hitting things that we don't want them to hit by giving them things that they have no choice to hit. Same with Zakama, Primal Calamity. Of course, you're going to have to hit Zakama. You can't leave that on the battlefield because of its crazy abilities. When it enters the battlefield, you get to untap all your lands, and then assuming you casted it. And then you can pay 3 different types of costs to get 3 different types of abilities, and you can pay those costs multiple times a turn. So I can gain a ridiculous amount of life in one turn. I can wipe out a bunch of creatures in one turn. I can destroy enchantments and artifacts. Lots of good stuff, but the big thing is it's a 9/9 with Reach, Vigilance, and Trample, which is just awesome. And the fact that you get to untap all your lands once you played it means you get to play an additional super big dinosaur afterwards, potentially. Such as Zalortha. Strength Incarnate. I love this guy. Lethal damage dealt to creatures you control is determined by their power rather than their toughness. What? Lethal damage dealt to creatures you control is determined by their power. Oh, okay. So instead of their backside being what keeps them alive, it's their power. So, I mean, you've got how many creatures in here that are just going to do insanely well off that? Like, there's a lot that are actually pretty well balanced, even on both sides, but there are a lot that will actually get some pretty solid benefits from it, too. So I can't complain. Next, another big hit card. Another money card. This one is not a holo, unfortunately, but still, it is an insanely valuable investment that I got. Another secret layer. And probably the classic scene that everybody remembers from Jurassic Park. Don't know much more that I can say about it, other than this card is insane because of its abilities. The Devouring is crazy in the first place, and then whenever it attacks, it deals damage equals to its power to one other target creature, and excess damage is dealt to that creature's controller. So basically, if I can sacrifice 3 or 4 things as this thing comes into play, it can get upwards. I think the highest I've ever had is a 30/30, which was nuts. I ended up sacrificing, let's see, how many creatures is that? 8 creatures to get it up to a 30/30, and basically was just swinging out like insane damage with this guy. And then finally, to finish off, I do love the artwork, of course, too, don't get me wrong. Can't get enough of that artwork. To finish off, this is the card that actually inspired the deck. If you followed my channel for a while, you know that I pulled this card way back when I first started collecting Magic. It was the first bundle box that I ever opened. And when I got this, I knew I wanted to build a dinosaur deck, and I knew I did not want to build its colors. So 5-color was the route that I decided to go from that point forward. And that final card is the Indominus Rex Alpha. I love this thing. This thing's ability is insane. When it enters the battlefield, you can discard any number of creature cards, for example, a Zatalpa. And when you discard those creatures, this thing gets all the abilities that were written on that creature. So essentially all the keywords. So for example, it will gain Flying, Double Strike, Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible. So I will get 5 counters put onto this creature, one representing each of those keywords. And then for each of those counters that came onto this card, I'm going to get to draw a card. So basically, this is going to become a 6/6 with an insane amount of keywords, first off. And then I'm going to get to draw a bunch of cards to refresh my hand, just off of playing this guy. And all I need to do is discard one guy. And that is true of a bunch of creatures in this deck. Like, for example, going back through, Flying Menace Haste is going to get... I'm going to get Flying First Strike Vigilance Trample Lifelink. Flying, I got Trample in here. I got some more Trample. I got some Reach. I got some Trample. The only thing it doesn't get is Ward, which is disappointing. Ward does not get transferred over onto this creature, which is the only thing that it can't grab, but everything else is plausible. Vigilance Reach Haste there. Vigilance Reach Trample there. So we got some decent options for discarding to buff this guy. He is definitely one of my closers, for sure. But he is not the closer, actually, which is ironic. Now that we are through the park, we're going to look at the artifacts to close out the deck. And then I'm going to show you the card that I consider the go-to to finish the game for me. And I have actually won... How many games of Commander have I won on using that card? 5? I think I've won 5 games now of Commander using that one card. So it is definitely the card to try and counter if you can counter it, but if you can't, it's definitely the card that is pretty much guaranteed to secure my victory. So, let's get into these and we'll see what they are. First off, Classic Soul Ring, just adding some extra mana. Darksteel Ingot, Indestructible, also gives me mana. And Mystic Skull, also gives me mana. The best thing about Mystic Skull, though, is I love this part. If I can get 5 mana and I transform it, it becomes a creature, and it gives all my lands the ability to tap for any color. So basically, it fixes all my lands so that I can play whatever creatures I want to play for my hand, which is awesome. So I like to try and get that guy early if I can, and get him transformed. Next, we have Shamil, the Inner Sun, because why the hell not? All my spells can't be countered, and at the beginning of my end step, I get to discover 5, just another way to throw out another dinosaur. Once I throw out that other dinosaur, I got to trigger a whole bunch of effects, etc., etc. Just great times. 2 more to go. My only copy of Roaming Throne is in this deck because, again, lots of dinosaur triggers, just a great guy to put in. But ironically, I have actually played this a couple times as a human trigger too, or a wizard trigger even, to go with Gandalf, so I can get double triggers off of him. So lots of different ways to go about this. But ultimately, I just love Roaming Throne for the simple fact that it's Roaming Throne. And again, it's just another thing that people are going to want to try and target to clear off your board. And ultimately, the goal, again, is to get everybody to waste all their counter magic, to waste all their other stuff on all that stuff there, so that when we get to this final beautiful card that nobody ever suspects to be an actual threat, I can pull it off and win the game. And what is that final card that gives me so many victories, you might ask? It is... boom. Altar of the Wretched. Altar of the Wretched is an insanely cool artifact. First off, when it enters the battlefield, I can sacrifice a non-token creature of my choice. And if I do, I get to draw X cards and then mill X cards, where X is that creature's power. So if I choose, for example, to sacrifice my Zatalpa and get like 12 cards into my hand and then 12 cards into my graveyard, that's just some good times. But that's not really what this card is about. That's just the intro to this card that makes everybody kind of sleep on it. Because when it comes into play, people are like, okay, so you refreshed your hand. It's not that big a deal. But what is a big deal is you can craft it with 1 or more creatures. Now, crafting, as far as I understand it, can be done with your graveyard, and it can also be done with your battlefield. Or, is it your battlefield or your hand? That's where I always get confused. Either way, once you craft with this thing, you get the most insane card that I could possibly have come up with. It is basically this guy that I built the deck around on steroids. It is Wretched Bone Mass. So Wretched Bone Mass's power and toughness are equal to the total power of all the exiled creatures that you use to craft it. Since you can choose to craft it with one or more creatures, you could basically wipe out your entire graveyard if you wish to do this. And it gets the exact same ability that the Indominus Rex does. If a creature had flying, this has flying. If a creature had indestructible, this has indestructible. So this thing just becomes the most insanely overpowered beat stick that I can just swing in for game with and win very quickly. As long as I exile something with haste, it can swing on the turn that it comes back in. As I say, it is the card that has closed out more games of Commander for me with this deck than any other card in this deck, including the Tyrannosaurus Rex, which has won me a couple. The Raptor combos have won me a few, but nothing has quite pulled off the amount of victories that this card does. If you can get your hands on a copy of this, I definitely recommend it. And with that, I'm going to close out this deck tech because I am really tired. I have no idea when my dad's going to get here, and Kaiba is thoroughly annoyed with the heat, so I want to turn out the light and try and cool him off some. I hope you guys have enjoyed this dinosaur deck on Super Deck Sunday. I have no idea what I'm going to do for next week's deck tech, so I'm not going to give you any hints right now. But I hope you enjoyed your weekend so far, and that you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Much love to you all from me. You take care. Bye.